This is a slightly embarrassing video to make, but I'm going to make it anyway because it might help you. I quit my job again for the 10th time since I started coding for money in 1999. And if you're here, you might be considering quitting your job too, and for a multitude of reasons. Maybe you're an aspiring leader and you're not getting the promotion or the job mobility opportunities that you want, like moving into a product manager role or moving into an actual like engineering manager position. Or maybe you're feeling underpaid or you're feeling underappreciated, or possibly just getting the itch, hashtag relatable. Over the years, I've developed a model that I use, kind of an assessment to be introspective and to really look at my job satisfaction across multiple dimensions and really kind of help guide my decision. Should I quit or should I stick around? My goal with this video will be to help get you unstuck if you're really sort of agonizing over this decision currently. And I want to talk about some traps to avoid towards the end of the video. One thing I want to address is this quiet quitting thing that's been going around for a while. And it just now has a name, but it's not anything like a new concept. I personally strongly advise against this quiet quitting mentality for multiple reasons. So I've been laid off 3 times. I've escaped layoff multiple times. And there were 2 other times where I had to leave a job quickly because I knew layoffs were coming. And 4 out of those 5 times, I was able to find a job directly through my network. People that I had actually worked with in the past who trusted me, who knew I did good work, and who could recommend me for jobs at their companies. If I was the person who just slacked off, did the bare minimum, didn't pull my weight, and just was there to collect a paycheck, as tempting as that might be, that I don't know that I would have gotten those recommendations. So being a quiet quitter, you can kind of destroy your network. And really, with this volatile environment that we're in, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, your network is everything. You need to do whatever you can to keep that really healthy and maintain those connections. So quiet quitting just pisses people off that you work with, and they're not going to recommend you for jobs if you get laid off or something. Okay, let's jump right into the model here that I've developed. And I really was looking at job satisfaction across 4 key dimensions. Now, as I go through this, you might have different dimensions, or some of these might not be important to you at all, but maybe the overall structure would still help you. When I look at my job satisfaction, and honestly, job satisfaction of those that I've coached in the past, it's an intersection of your company as a whole, the leaders in the company, your direct leaders and those leaders that they report to, the job itself, like the jobby type stuff, like your compensation and benefits, and then the daily experience, just the day-to-day experience of that job. So to help you in actually doing this self-assessment, I've created a spreadsheet here, and I've actually used this myself to go through and do assessments when I'm trying to evaluate my overall job satisfaction. But I'll put a link to this. It's just a Google Sheets document. I'll put a link to it. You can just go grab it. And each of these areas, the company, the leadership, the day-to-day work, the role and benefits, more detailed questions that you can ask. You can give it a rating and add comments as you go, as you have thoughts. And the idea here isn't necessarily to have some magic number that's going to, tell you what to do, but it's helping you be introspective in a structured way so that you can actually make a decision and stop with the hand wringing and the worrying, and you can take positive action towards improving your life, essentially. So looking at the company dimension, and a story I can share here about why I think this is important is I worked for a company. I was really reluctant to join, but I needed a job because I was changing cities. And it turned out that it was really in a business that I just almost didn't agree with existing in the first place. And it just kind of gave me the ick working at this company. The owners of the company had all of their like Porsches and exotic cars, and they would all hang out in there, and they'd drive their cars around the parking lot and stuff where everybody was just watching them. It's like really tacky. The structure of the company, so is it publicly traded, private equity, a startup, or privately held, or maybe there's probably some other types of companies that can actually really impact the overall experience you have. For example, I've worked for a couple of private equity companies, and I've noticed that because of the nature, the way that company is structured, the holding companies are much more cost conscious of their software development. And so because they're really extracting a lot of that value and kind of spreading it across the other portfolio companies and basically returning it to their own checking accounts. So they really want things to be really efficient and super predictable. I found that I have a lower overall satisfaction at private equity type companies. The products and the mission, obviously what they build and like what the company stands for. The culture, obviously, is it a hustle culture, a move fast and break things culture, kind of calm and risk averse culture, like a frenetic pace? Is it more of a corporate culture, family oriented? All of those things kind of trickle down and affect your overall satisfaction. And then the growth of the company itself, I'd say the overall health. Is it a healthy company, healthy financials? Its market position has like a dominant market position. It's growing or has a plan for growth. So the next dimension is the leaders of the company, which includes your direct manager, but also kind of your entire chain of leadership. The leaders, they have a sort of an outsized impact on your experience at the company. One example I have here, I worked for a company. There was a leader that I reported to that I think was being dishonest, generally speaking, and he just really was not very trustworthy. And it didn't make me feel very confident working for the company. I ended up leaving predominantly because of this person. I just didn't trust them, and they were in a very senior level position. And then I found out, a few years later that there were some shady dealings with the big consultancy that they had brought in to do some work. So I don't want to reveal too much, but needless to say, that was reason enough for me to leave a company. Some of the other things to look at when it comes to leaders: do they have an actual vision and a strategy in place? Do they have a plan? And are you kind of bought into that plan? A lot of leaders that kind of are just going through the motions, more focused on just day-to-day management. They don't necessarily have a direction for the department or for your team or for the group. So are they communicative? Do you know about things that are happening at the next level up? Are they rolling those things down? Are they keeping you informed? Are they trustworthy? Again, could you have more of a private conversation with them and trust them with information that could be incriminating, I guess? Are they a supportive leader? So if you're going through some things, are they going to be there for you? Are they going to give you the coaching that's needed as well to support your growth in the role? So let me know in the comments if you had this experience too, where obviously the inverse here is true, where good leaders can keep you really engaged and help to kind of overcome some of the other maybe dysfunctions. I'd love to hear any experience that you've had here. This next dimension is the job itself, the jobby things about the job. One example I have is I worked for a company when I was doing consulting, and it was great. I mean, I learned a ton. I had really supportive leadership, lots of great growth opportunities, lots of variation in the work, working in different clients. Compensation was market level and the benefits were good. And I had a lot of pride in where I worked. But eventually, after a few years, I was kind of hit a ceiling. I wanted to move into software delivery, team delivery management, where I was managing a team. There just wasn't an opportunity to do that. So I decided to take another opportunity and moved into management. So that's one of the reasons I left this job. Some of the other things when it comes to the job stuff is compensation. So this is a big one. One of the things that I've done in the past is I've really tried to not chase salary. I've tried to be comfortable and okay with market pay. There have been a few times when I felt like I was below market. Once I did go to a boss and say, hey, I kind of feel like I'm a good $10,000 or $15,000 under market here. I want to stick around. I love the company. Is there anything you can do? And they went and they did some discussion and they got me a mid-year pay raise. So just because you don't feel fairly compensated doesn't necessarily mean you just quit your job. Sometimes there's things that can be done. The flexibility. So if you have to leave early to go pick up a kid, or you have a doctor's appointment, or you're not feeling well and you need to take a half day, that type of flexibility, that's something actually that's a very high currency for me personally. Opportunity, already I mentioned. So opportunity for learning and for growth into new roles with higher levels of responsibility. And then overall job security. Now I kind of mentioned this already with the company growth and the company health and the job itself. Does that feel like a secure job? So the last dimension here is, it may be similar to the job piece, but I wanted to give it its own dimension because it's the actual day-to-day experience that you have when you go in for your 8 hours or you open up the laptop or whatever, if you're remote. What is that like to do the job, to be with your peers, to be in the meetings? Like, what is it like? This, to me, is actually the number one dimension I've just learned over the years. One example I have is I had a fairly senior level position in leadership, and it was for a pretty good company. I really liked the people. Because of the level of leadership, the pay was really good. And there was surprisingly good work-life balance, I would say, generally speaking. But the job itself, like the actual daily tasks, made me like borderline miserable. Just spending all my time in Excel, doing budgets, or in PowerPoint, doing presentations to senior leadership, in meetings with other VPs and above. I'm not very political. I'm pretty direct and just open. So I would say things that, my boss would come back around and say, hey, when this person's in the room, make sure you put a lid on that or whatever. And I just couldn't keep it all straight in my head. The whole day was meetings, and I hated the job, the actual job piece of it, the tasks. Other things to look at with the day-to-day experience is what I just talked about is engagement. Are you engaged in the work itself? Can you get into that kind of deep work flow state where you're finding some enjoyment from the work? Or, there are people who really like that kind of thrive in that chaos with a lot of change and that frenetic pace. I'm not one of those people necessarily, but some people do, and they really enjoy that. It kind of makes them feel alive. And the workload itself, is it too much? And now we're getting into here some of the reasons why I did leave my current position. I'm not going to talk bad about that company at all. There was a good company, good people, good bosses. The job was also a good job, but it was the workload and the day-to-day experience of doing the job that I decided just wasn't for me. I'm just not one of those people that can spin 20 plates in the air at once and like be the spider at the center of the web and know the status of every single user story and every project and every person. I don't hold all that in my brain. And then the people that you work with on a day-to-day basis, I mean, they impact your experience in a huge way. Are they, you don't have to become like best friends necessarily, but do you respect them? Are they competent? Are they good to work with? And then overall balance, it's similar to workload, but your work and your life balance. Do you feel like you're constantly thinking about work when you're at the dinner table and you wake up thinking about work and you can't sleep because of work? And that can be true even if you're working 8 hours a day. And I really think that can be a factor in burnout. So I wanted to add that to the dimensions as well. So I strongly encourage taking action after you do this type of an assessment. And I have this acronym that I've had in my head for a long time, ADD, and this isn't some like poking fun at the disorder of attention deficit disorder, but it's assess, digest, and decide. So go through, do the assessment, kind of capture where you are, capture your thoughts, let it percolate for a little bit, come back to the assessment a few times. Your emotional states and your frustration levels can fluctuate. So don't make an emotional decision. But then at some point, kind of decide what your next steps are. And I think there's basically 5 levels of decision here. Level 1 is you're going to stick with the job, and you go through the assessment, realize like, yeah, the job is fine. It's meeting all my needs. It's checking all the boxes, but there may be other reason why I'm not satisfied that is more related to myself. Maybe there's some mental or physical health stuff going on, or there's like a major life changes I'm going through, I'm moving, or we just had a baby or something. Those things can obviously sap your energy and then impact your satisfaction at work. So you have to kind of be clear on what are some of the root causes there. Level 2 is you're deciding to stick around, but you do want to make some changes. So either the role itself, you would like to take a different role because you need a change, or any of the other reasons we talked about, or maybe you really just aren't vibing with your manager. And depending on the company, you can get that resolved. You can get moved to a different team, and that can be handled tactfully with your HR department. Level 3 is, now I hesitate to even bring this one up because it allows for indecision, but it's more of like a holding pattern. You think you might want to be leaving, but you don't really know what you want to do yet. And so you still have to really think about what you want your next steps to be. That's where you start to actually go look into the market, what kinds of jobs are out there currently, evaluating the market, You're not ready to start actively looking or anything yet. The fourth level is you've actually decided to quit. So this is when you start looking at what kind of job that you want to move into. You start applying. You start actively with skill, like upskilling if there's some new, like you need to migrate off of this legacy technology and go to something else. So you start doing some learning on your own to make you more marketable, and you start actively seeking out new employment. And then the level 5 is something more like you've decided to quit and you need to quit fairly urgently. And this could be for any number of reasons. Often I've seen this where somebody is really, really fried, really burned out, or they're actually in a true toxic environment. We throw that toxic word around quite a bit, but they're really in a toxic situation that is unhealthy for them and they need to get out. So that would be kind of the nuclear option. So this leads me into the caution that I wanted to encourage, if you're thinking about taking the nuclear option, or if you're just thinking about quitting in general, you need to really consider the market conditions. And at the time of this recording, which is late 2024, the job market is still pretty crap. It's not as desperate feeling as it was earlier this year and in 2023. There's not like layoffs in the news every other week, but it's still not excellent. So I advise caution unless you are truly in a desperate situation, you have to get out, or you have another job lined up, then I advise against the nuclear option completely. So you really need to take your time, make sure you find something first. And then a couple other things I already alluded to is, and I've experienced this myself multiple times, but if you're really feeling discontented in your job, going through the assessment, doing some introspection, is it you? Is it not the job at all? Is it something that you need to work on yourself? Or is it something that you're going through in your life? Like I mentioned, some major life changes. So you don't want to go and make a rash decision because you're bringing that person and all your circumstances to the next job. So you can end up doing what I did for a little bit and just kind of hopping and looking for contentment when there was stuff internally that I needed to fix first. If things don't seem to be working out and your first reaction is that you just want to quit because things are getting hard, you could be missing a prime opportunity to really like punch through some barriers and to grow yourself. One example I have is I took a job, and within literally the first week I was told, hey, we're going to move you to this other team. They're really dysfunctional and there's a lot of toxic personalities, and we're thinking about disbanding the team and firing everyone, and we need you to help turn it around. And within a few weeks I was like, this sucks. I'm done. Within the month I started to look for new jobs, and eventually though I decided I'm just going to stick this out because I think this is a challenge for me as a leader to try to work through this, see if I can save this team, find what the issues are. It was the most challenging 6 months of my career probably, but I grew so much. I learned how to enter into conflict because I'm kind of a conflict avoider. So I learned a lot about that. I learned how to deal with toxic personalities. I learned how to bring people together who were from different cultural backgrounds and different roles, different capabilities on the team, how to bring people together and to kind of rally around the work and be productive. To this day, and that was probably 10 years ago now, to this day, it's one of my more proud moments that I've had is sticking that out. So don't deprive yourself of that just because things get hard. And again, that's why the assessment's important, so you can think logically and rationally about what you're experiencing. And really just thanks so much. I wish you luck with your job search or trying to decide what you're going to do. Leave some comments. I try to respond to them all. I'll try to give you some pointers if possible. So good luck to you. See you later.